All right, hello and welcome back. Brett here with clickmill.co. So in this video, we're going to be talking about statistical probabilities in decision making. So when we begin looking at large data sets, the data only becomes valuable when you have enough to make predictions about future user behavior. And now, when we think on an everyday basis, we think, in first person about me and my things. And so many times when ministries, when, businesses are thinking about making decisions, they're thinking about one user or one client. We've worked with a lot of private schools and it's, well, yeah, but how much, how do I say this? That lead is worth X amount. Well, that lead's not worth X amount because you don't know if that lead's going to sign up or not. We can't tell the future. So what we have to do is we have to start a statistical analysis of the data and say, what is it actually worth considering that you only get 1 in 3 students? So now we're looking at the statistical value of the probability of getting that client in the future. So if you only close 1 in 3, it's worth 1/3 statistically. Now, that one may come in, that one may not come in, and then the real actualized value in the future will be either 0 or the full amount, of the value of the client because they're a client. But right now, we don't know the future. So what we have to do is we have to statistically analyze it and say, well, if the average client's $10,000 a year for, let's say, just a private school, well, every lead then, if we're only going to get 1 in 3, every lead is worth about $3,333. So 33%. And so when you project that over a long term with lots of leads, you can then project their earnings on a service. And so this is the way in which we're thinking statistically. And so this is why rates are so important when we look at digital data. And you'll see this as we continue to go into the analysis of data. There's a lot of numbers, but rates are very important. What is the click-through rate into your website? Because if the click-through rate is 0.4%, which is where ours was a couple of years ago from, let's say, from Google, well, that's really important. That's telling me that only 1 in every 200 people are interested in what is showing up on Google. That's very low. I should be 3%, 5%, 6% on average, something like that. And so that is going to start telling me, if I know that the average benchmark is 3% and I'm at 0.4, now I can start saying, oh, I'm underperforming in this area. How do I alter course? How do I optimize things to get more people coming in? And this is a very powerful way of thinking because I'm not thinking about anyone in particular. I'm just thinking about the rate at which people see my website in Google and then click on it. And you obviously want them to click on it more. Well, if let's just say you have a 0.5% click-through rate and you can just move that to 1%, a good is 2 or 3%. You're not even doing good yet. I mean, it's okay. But if you can go from 0.5% to 1%, you're doubling the amount of website traffic for yourself or that client. You're doubling the website traffic. That's a huge move. Doubling the website traffic, assuming they're getting sales on their website, is going to double the leads, which is going to double the sales, which is going to double the gross income. Well, that's crazy. So when you can get a 0.5% move, you can double their income. And so this is looking at these sort of looking at the data more statistically than when it's about individual people. And there's any number of ways we can filter this. If you've been in my courses for very long, you'll know that I'm a big fan of the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. We can look at a whole list of clients and see which 20% of those clients, the top 20%, are bringing in 80% of all your income. That's really valuable information. We can say also 10% of your clients will always pay 10 times more. That's really valuable information to know. So we can start trying to figure out which of our 10% will do that. And so another example of thinking statistically is conversion rates. Well, and again, this is another rate, 1 in 100 people, say 1% of people purchase on our ecom platform, our ecom website. Well, 1% is toward the lower end of acceptable. How do we get it a little higher? And then we can begin testing specific behaviors. Well, what are they interacting with on that purchase path? And it turns out in this, let's just say in this example, it turns out as you run through that process, you've got extra steps in there you don't need. Like, we run them to the shop, and then they're shopping, they add to cart, and then the add to cart has, like, let's say, is asking for information prior to them clicking checkout. And so they're like, whoa, hold on, I didn't ask for this. And then they're not clicking checkout. Well, what if you just move that behind the checkout when they're expecting it? You'll get more people flowing through and purchasing. Or what if you took a coupon code that says enter at checkout, get 10% off your first purchase, and the coupon code says get 10. And you give them that in the cart. So they see the cart. And then what's going to happen? More people are going to click through the checkout so they can see what that discount looks like. And of course, having more people on the checkout page, you're going to get more checkouts. So when we look at the statistical probabilities in the data, we can begin then saying, if I'm only getting 2 in 10, how could I get 3 in 10? How could I get 4 in 10? And we're just looking at the larger picture. If I sell this many, then I can project the average value to be this over a long period. So these are just ways to think statistically about broad sets of data. And it's actually more valuable in many cases than the personal data. One client's personal data is nice if it's a big client. But on the other side, the statistical data will tell you how to improve the experience and improve your value add for all of the people on your website, which is going to increase the likelihood that any one of them is going to purchase or sign up by multiple percents. And this can lead to doubling, tripling, quadrupling the income, especially for the kind of newer businesses. So thinking statistically and in probabilities is very valuable and essentially required for working with large data sets, because you're not going to know who it is and you just have so many. And when maybe I'll offer one kind of story here. And this was my first exposure to this way of thinking. And it really changed my life, because it allows you to kind of move forward and not take things so personally. When I was young, I used to want to go on mission trips with my church. And, we were broke. My parents didn't have any money. And they were like, well, yeah, you can go, but you got to make the money. Well, how am I going to do that? We'll go mow lawns. You can go take our mower. You can go mow the lawns for the neighbors. It's like, well, what if they say no? Well, they will say no. Matter of fact, I think my mom told me 9 out of 10 of them will say no, or not. You'll get 9 no's for every 1 yes, or something. I think that's what she said. So I was like, oh, like immediately. I wasn't feeling, what happens when I go to the door, I'm seeing it in my head and they say no. Oh, I feel so rejected. I'm embarrassed. I'm a failure. And then she told me that. And I was like, 9 out of 10 will just, one will say yes. It's immediately not personal. I just got to go to enough doors. Well, that's easy. And I circled the blocks so many times. At one point, I had some guy threaten to call the police on me. He's like, quit coming to my house and asking me to mow the lawn. You can't mow my lawn. But hey, the numbers worked out. And I went on all the trips, because it's just a statistical probability. And, if I were smarter when I was younger, it would be, okay, 1 out of 10 says yes, but how do I get it to be 2 out of 10? What can I do? Can I dress up in a crazy outfit? Can I, like, what else can you do to add the value to get people to be more likely to say yes? One thing I actually did figure out when I was young was, by telling them I was trying to go on a trip with my church, they were much more willing, and that actually did help. So I guess I did, to some degree, do that when I was young. But we can work the probabilities, and then we can work to increase the probabilities so that we are even more successful with whatever it is that we're doing with the existing numbers we're working with. So anyway, again, this is statistical probabilities, how to think statistically so that we can increase our ability to get more results from the same amount of work. All right, so with that, thank you for being with me here in this course on the basics of data. We're going to continue in the next course, next video, on how to analyze data and what that looks like. We'll see you there.